Would you believe it if we told you that George Orwell's 1984 isn't a prophecy, but rather history? Burma was controlled by a totalitarian regime that was strikingly similar to the totalitarian government in 1984. Similarities include structure and leader, oppressive military control, poor economy, lack of freedom, and use of propaganda. Burma was run by dictator Nguyen from 1962 to 1988, and until 2010 was run by a military government in which Nguyen was a prominent figure after his government stepped down in 1988.
Structure and leader. The Burmese totalitarian regime's first similarity to the totalitarian regime in 1984 comes in its structure and its big brother-like dictator, General Ne Win. Just like the leader in 1984 is named Big Brother, Shumong adopted the name Une Win, which means brilliant as the sun, to represent an all-knowing being like God. Big Brother comes to power by leading a revolution to oust the capitalist government. Identically, Ne Win led a revolution to overthrow the capitalist government and become leader of Burma in 1962. Burma's structural similarities to the totalitarian regime in 1984 come to light after Ne Win's rise to power. Within 2 years, Ne Win had suspended all constitutions, dissolved the legislature, and made Burma a one-party state. As a result, just like in 1984, Burma had only one party that was permanent to exist, the Burmese Socialist Program Party, which Ne Win was chairman. Like Big Brother does to his comrades Jones, Rutherford, and Aronson after coming to power in 1984, to prevent any future opposition, Ne Win arrests members of the former government, many of whom die in jail.
Oppressive military control. In 1984, the totalitarian government maintains power using force. It routinely performs summary executions, arrests, and eventually kills anyone who threatens their power. Similarly, the Nguyen regime is guilty of the same. To prevent any future opposition, when Nguyen gained power in 1962, he arrested the former Prime Minister U Nu and many other members of former government, many of whom died in jail. During Nguyen's rule, protests against the government broke out several times, but they were always suppressed with the 1984-like shoot-first policy. In 1963, the military killed 15 students who were performing a demonstration against the government. Other student-led protests were also brutally suppressed throughout Nguyen's rule, commonly ending in the closure of those universities and colleges. In 1974, workers from over 100 factories went on a strike, upon whom the military opened fire. After stepping down as the leader of BSPP, Nguyen warned regarding the disturbances.
The army would have to be called, and I would like to declare from here on, if the army shoots, it shoots straight to kill.
Nguyen stayed to his words when anti-government protests broke out in the 1988 uprising. The government killed and jailed thousands. When Nguyen stepped down, the military government, in which he had a prominent role, continued to use force to maintain power. When the National League for Democracy won in the 1990 election, the government boycotted the election and arrested nearly 2,000 political prisoners, including the leader, many of whom were left to rot in jails.
Poor economy. Both Ne Win and Big Brother's socialist and isolationist policies caused economic recession to both Burma and Oceania. The biggest indicator of this is Burma's 3-year plans, which repeatedly failed, just as Oceania's 3-year plans would repeatedly fail, as Winston reveals. Identical to the government in 1984, the Ne Win regime nationalized the economy and pursued a policy of autarky, which isolated Burma from the rest of the world. As a result of these policies and political repression, most foreign businessmen and educated Burmese were forced to leave. By the 1970s, Burma, once a leading rice exporter, was now experiencing food shortages just like the people of 1984. Eventually, much of the Burmese economy was driven into the black market and into smuggling. In 1984, the black market and smuggling fills most needs and desires for citizens that cannot be filled by the government. For instance, Julia brings Winston chocolate she got from the black market, because chocolate rations are not enough. Similarly, the Burmese begin to rely on the black market and smuggling for basic needs like food. When the military government rose to power in 1988, the country kept the same policies as Ne Win's regime, thus preventing any economic improvements.
Lack of freedom. Although General Nguyen stepped down from his position as the leader of the BSPP, his government system was kept largely intact by the new military government, resulting in enormous effects on its citizens, even after Burma was renamed as Myanmar in 1989. Similar to the citizens of Oceania in 1984, the Burmese were denied freedom of expression and were forbidden any unorthodoxy that contradicted the party's ideology. The freedom of religion was mostly restricted. As Nguyen and the majority of the Burmese were Buddhist, the government tried to impose Buddhism upon the ethnic minorities in an attempt at orthodoxy. Particularly, Muslims were constantly attacked by the Burmese army. The Burmese military started anti-Muslim riots and destroyed several mosques in 1997. Similarly, people in Oceania are strictly banned from following any religion, as Big Brother is all-knowing and powerful. This restriction can be shown through the poet Ampleforth in 1984. He was arrested and executed for leaving the word God in a poem because he could not replace it. The Burmese were sent to prison or possibly sentenced to death if they were caught downgrading the party's reputation. They were also forbidden from any kind of speech that could be deemed anti-government. Identically, in 1984, Parsons is arrested for saying "down with Big Brother" in his sleep.
Use of propaganda. Similar to 1984, the Burmese government's use of propaganda played a huge role in maintaining order in Burma and controlling its citizens. Although Burma had over 30 newspapers before the 1962 revolution, there was just one national newspaper by 1988, the New Light of Myanmar. The New Light of Myanmar was a government-owned newspaper published by the Ministry of Information, which is eerily similar to the Ministry of Truth in 1984. The New Light of Myanmar was viewed as a propaganda scheme dedicated to promoting the Tatmadaw or the military and the government, often featuring articles about military officials. Like Burma, Oceania also has a government-owned newspaper meant for promoting the government. Moreover, Burma's state television and radio were fairly predictable, with images of generals making rousing speeches and cutting ribbons being common. Similarly, in 1984, the telescreen works as a device that the party uses to transmit propaganda idolizing Big Brother.
Now with the democratic leadership established after 2012 onward, Myanmar has had a democracy and shows some signs of improvement and hope of coming out of the totalitarian rule on the horizon.